the Israeli, the Channel 12 in Israel reported that Israel wants to attack Iran, if even if the United States decides not to cooperate or to be part of that. How serious is that? And how do you see the atmosphere with the Trump administration? Are they going to get back to the war? Or maybe they give the green light to Israel attacking and there they join in Israel?
Well, what I'm hearing from my friends in the military is they expect this, they expect another round of attacks, uh, potentially this week. Now, expectations one thing. Will they really do it? Who knows? Um, but there have been sort of some surprising developments in the last 24 hours with um, Israel firmly rejecting, telling Trump to go pound sand as far as his uh, peace deal that he brokered for Gaza. I don't think that's going to sit well with Trump. Uh, Look, when Trump turns on people like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens for what he saw as being disloyal or not accepting what he wanted, uh, I think he'll give the same treatment to Bibi Netanyahu. And so I think the Israelis have really made a blunder, and I'm sure it's being done for political purposes, domestic political purposes. Oh, there will never be a Palestinian state. We're not going to agree to this at all. Trump can go pound sand. Well, it reinforces this concept that Trump's just a little bitch, that he has to do what Bibi Netanyahu says. And I don't think Trump likes being perceived that way. He likes to be perceived as he's the one telling Bibi what the score is. So, um, on the one hand, weighing more attacks on Iran, but apparently General Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, he is the principal military advisor to Donald Trump, has said, further attacks are only going to weaken us, not strengthen us, and they're not likely to force the Iranians to change. Now, Commander of CENTCOM, Brad Cooper, he reportedly, it sounds like in some regards, he shares Kane's view, but they've come forward with sort of a 20-day plan for bombing the hell out of Iran, in theory, even though they'll be, they'll have less munitions than they did during the first 42 days of the war. It could be that they'll give it one more shot, thinking all we got to do now is put more military pressure and Iran will fold. And then when they do that and Iran ends up retaliating in a massive way on Israel and on other U.S. bases in Jordan, I think they'll realize, oops, that was a mistake.
How about Israel attacking Iran without the
Uh,
United States?
I don't see how they can, because they're going to need U.S. Refuelers to do it. And they're going to have the cooperation of the Saudis to fly over Saudi territory. I don't, conceivably the Saudis might give in to U.S. pressure, but they're not going to allow Israel to do that. So I think Israel's just, talking out of their hat on this.
Do you think that the new agreement, the new military, I would say military pact or military cooperation with Turkey and Pakistan, are they gonna, talk with Saudi Arabia if they're gonna use their airspace? Because part of that is how they're gonna manage their difficulties with the region. I'm talking about Saudi Arabia, how they're gonna manage their, the country in terms of the conflicts, ongoing conflicts with Iraq, with Yemen, and right now you mentioned Saudi Arabia. They need, Israel needs Saudi Arabia airspace, the Saudi airspace to attack Iran.
Yeah.
And how do you see the reaction on the part of those two countries?
Well, first of all, let's look at, they signed that agreement. And since signing that agreement, the Houthis and the PMF have launched attacks inside Saudi Arabia. What have Turkey and Pakistan done or said in regards to that? I don't even think there's been condemnation of the Houthis or the Iraqis, the Iraqi militia, the PMF. I don't think either Turkey or Pakistan have said anything about that, and which goes, the agreement ostensibly says that an attack on one is an attack on all. Well, there's been an attack on one, and the others haven't reacted as if it's an attack on them.
What is, Larry, your understanding of Donald Trump getting back to the war, as you've mentioned? What is that all about when it comes to the opening of the Strait of Hormuz? Because after all, the whole operation is about the Strait of Hormuz right now. Nobody's talking about the nuclear program, anything else. And how I saw today, Democrats, basically all of them, they say the war was lost. Most of them, not all of them. The war was lost. We know that was a defeat, but we have to get out as soon as possible. It doesn't seem that would be the understanding on the part of Republicans. And what is your understanding of that?
Well, the Republicans, or let's say it, the Republican, and I'm including in that the MAGA base, they're split. So there is a real division there now, and it's not going to be quickly resolved. So it's there as a point of conflict that I've likened it, and I intend to write on this more extensively. That it's comparable, potentially comparable to the split that took place in the party out of which the Republican Party was born in 1854. So in 1854, the dominant party was the Whigs. The issue then was slavery. And, are we going to allow parts of the United States that are not currently slave states to be slave states or not? And that created a real fissure, a real division. Well, the division that's emerging within the MAGA base are those that want to surrender themselves to Israel, and those that say, no, we're not. We got to be America first, not Israel first. And so that's a real issue. Sorry, my dog he's hearing something going crazy. So there's a potential for that to really cause a split within the whole Republican Party, and that kind of split is going to weaken the Republicans going into the fall elections. So there's a sizable number of Republicans as well that are I think we talked about this yesterday. I mentioned Mark McCloskey, who was he's based in Missouri. He and his wife came to some notoriety during the Black Lives Matter protests. They were in St. Louis. They had a group of these Black Lives Matter people trying to come into the yard in their home, and they were standing outside with guns. But he had been Trump's campaign manager, and he had the task to work Pennsylvania for Trump in the 2016 election. So he was a genuine Trump supporter, big time. Not now, and it's all over. It's all over Trump surrendering America first to making America second when it comes to Israel. So that tension's there, and so that's one of the other factors that's at play here, which could give Trump pause. Even though there's a part, he's getting a lot of pressure, from people that still have access to him, like General Jack Keane, retired, and General Fruit Loops or Keith Kellogg. He's getting, and then Miriam Adelson going, you got to do something about Iran. You can't let them off. You got to continue the military campaign. But then he's getting advice from General Kane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, saying no, 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 no. We can't. We've done everything we can do at this point. Any further military efforts like this are simply going to weaken us, not weaken them, weaken us. We're gonna end up giving up weapons that we can't afford to replace, or if we try to replace them, it's going to be 4 to 5 years before they're replaced. So there is no readily obvious military path forward. It's largely very negative and very harmful to the United States. That said, that doesn't mean that Trump will do what's rational, because he's done some pretty irrational things here of late.
Who's supporting these people like Keith Kellogg, General Keith Kellogg? Because he was, when it comes, you remember when Donald Trump, he has decided he's going to be his envoy in Ukraine. Then right now in the West Asia, you see every time they want to talk, they want to say something about the war, Keith Kellogg is one of the few people that Fox News would ask him, would ask him to come on the program to talk about the war and how to manage the war. Who are these people? Are they supported by the military industrial complex? Do they have the links with them, or they're somehow they get their support from the political parties?
Yeah, we're doing like a cheerleader cheer. Give me an I, give me an S, give me an R, give me an A, give me an E, give me an L. What does that spell? Israel. Yeah, Israel's the one funding it through the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee, and it's it's a real problem. That the loyalty is not to America. The loyalty is to Israel, and so to that extent, they're carrying water for Israel, insisting that that's the only viable way forward for the United States. Pretty short-sighted view, but that's the Israelis have been trying to buy. They've purchased these influencers, but the influencers, they're running up against the realities that America doesn't have the weapons that it once thought it did.
Israel today, Stas said that Stanislav Krapivnik, for those people who don't know Stas, he said that Mossad is involved in Ukraine to the neck. He said that there's so much involved. What do they want from Ukraine? I'm talking about Israelis.
Yeah, well, you've got this a prominent number of Ukrainian Jews who hated the Soviet Union, that they continued to hate Russia, ascribe to Russia the same, treating Russia as if it's the Soviet Union. It's not. But the real irony there is, here's Israel, who its foundation was predicated upon the Holocaust. We must never allow that to happen again. The Holocaust carried out by Nazis. It was the National Socialist Party of Germany that carried that out. And so, in theory, the Israelis said, never again. And yet they've aligned themselves with Nazis, which discredits their entire Holocaust argument, in my view. That we got to prevent this. This will never happen again. Therefore, we're going to align ourselves with the ideological heirs of the very movement that tried to exterminate us. It's crazy, and part of Putin and the Russian reluctance is a large, I would say upwards of 30%, it may be that high in Israel, are Russian Russian passport holders. So you still have a number of Russians, but Russians who hate Putin.
Yeah. I even hating Putin and trying to do something for Ukraine. That's not the case for Ukraine. We know that.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, I think
This is
it's
the tragedy, in my opinion, with Ukraine. That whenever you try to help them or to provide them with weapons, it means that they're gonna get killed more and more. They're not gonna be saved, or they're not gonna be,
yeah, they're caught in a meat grinder, and the Russians have a clear advantage, even though Russia is fighting a proxy war with NATO, and they've killed the Russians have killed a number of NATO personnel that have gone to Ukraine to provide advice, to provide intelligence, to operational support. But there have been several strikes, in particular over the last 3 or 4 weeks, that have killed a large number of NATO personnel.
yeah. Here is, Larry, what was reported as the U.S. Air Force E-3B Centauri AWACS aircraft has been circulating over northeastern Saudi Arabia for several hours. Yesterday, we learned that, and it means that this is the aircraft that is gathering information, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, it is basically a replacement, not the best replacement for ground radar that the Iranians destroyed. So now the United States has to rely upon these AWACS instead of the ground radar. So that's a problem, because normally they would have the ground radar would have told them everything, the locations where the PMF is firing from. So that's what that AWACS was doing, trying to identify the firing positions of the PMF, and that could then become, they'd pass that information to the Saudis, and the Saudis would ostensibly use it to carry out attacks on those sites in Iraq.
They attack Yemenis attacked Saudi Arabia last night again, and it was in response to Saudi Turkish drones going to Yemen, gathering information, and they attacked Saudi again.
Right.
How?
Yeah, I mean that's like I said, the Houthis and the PMF allies are not going to give up, and so this will broaden the war, and put then Saudi Arabia more in the crosshairs. And the Saudis, they bombed. I think the PMF bombed another refinery site inside Saudi Arabia. I've likened it to. So let's say you got two people that are fighting. One person lives in a glass house. That's Saudi Arabia. The PMF lives in a brick house. Now, they're in a rock. They're attacking each other with rocks. Well, who's going to have a better chance of breaking windows with rocks, the PMF or the Saudis? Well, clearly the PMF. The Saudis they're living metaphorically in a glass house, and they can't stop the PMF from throwing rocks and breaking their glass houses.
Yeah. The Turkish foreign minister responded, Larry. He was asked about Saudi Arabia and its position in the ongoing conflict. He said that when we talk to Saudi Arabia regarding Iran, they don't have an intention to say things like, let's wage war on Iran, let's destroy Iran, let's do this and that in Iran. They have different opinion on this matter. MBS, in his recent conversation with Trump, shared the view that this war must stop as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And that military intervention against Iran is in no way a solution. And that this issue should be resolved through dialogue and agreement. This is the same tone that we hear from the Iranians as well. They said that Saudi Arabia is in contact with them, talking the same way as Fidan, the foreign ministry of Turkey, was just mentioning his sort of understanding of Saudi Arabia. But this is one part. On the other hand, you see the conflict with Yemen, with Iraq, as you mentioned. And you see the mainstream media, New York Times, for example, reporting that Saudi Arabia wants to, they didn't want this, during the war, they were trying to picture Saudi Arabia as one of the main countries supporting the war. And what is the position of Saudi Arabia putting these two sides, two different sides, by the way? One side says Saudi Arabia is prepared. Donald Trump said that in his last, sort of thought. He said they did everything to support us. They supported us. They prepared. They provided us with everything. Who's telling us the truth?
There can be two truths. The Saudis are caught in this battle with Ansar Allah, and for whatever reason, they won't let it go. And so Ansar Allah is going to keep punching back at them. But I think that the true intent of that Mecca agreement was ultimately aimed at Israel, not at Iran, and certainly not at the Houthis. Because if it was, then you'd see Pakistan and Turkey coming out being very forceful and condemning the Houthis, and then moving military assets against them. There's no way that Turkey and Pakistan present more military power than a U.S. carrier strike group. So the U.S. carrier strike group already tried to defeat the Houthis and failed. And so if they think that this is going to come out in a different way, they're kidding themselves.
We know that Ukraine, together with Europeans, they're coming together to produce interceptors or missiles for the air defense system. Do you see Israel being part of that, or asking to do something?
Well, they're trying it, but again, their systems are crap. They get a lot of Western propaganda about how powerful the Israelis are militarily, but they're not.
Who's paying right now for those weapons that Ukraine is producing? We know that Donald Trump is making money out of the situation in Ukraine, but he's not paying anything, to my understanding.
Yep. No, I mean, that's true. They are, more of it's coming out of Europe, I think. But again, there are weapons, supposedly they're going to provide some more PAC-3 missiles. From where? They don't have them to provide. They're it's like providing unicorns. You can conceive of them, but it's a mythological creature. And at this point, ample supplies of PAC-3 missiles for that air defense system, the Patriot, that's also mythical.